Imagine this, the sound of wedding bells, echoing through these grand, maybe slightly imposing, corridors of the Spanish Alcazar in Madrid. It's 1560. The air is just thick with incense, power, the scent of brand new silk.
Mm. And it's pure pageantry, isn't it? You've got nobles dripping in velvet and the queen herself, Isabel, draped in this incredibly heavy cloth of gold. It almost looks like it's meant to, well, literally anchor her to Spain.
It really does. And this whole ceremony, it's not just a wedding, is it? It's this massive statement of 16th century power play. Diplomats from all over Europe are watching.
Exactly. It's meant to signal peace, stability, a secure future built on this union between two empires that had been, tearing each other apart for decades.
But if you could somehow filter out all that noise, the music, the gold, the pronouncements, what you might hear, very faintly, is the sound of a 14-year-old girl crying. A girl who had absolutely no say in any of this.
And that's really our starting point today, isn't it?
Yes, that's where we're diving in. We're looking at the, well, incredibly brief and deeply tragic life of Isabel de Valois, King Philip II of Spain's third wife. We want to go beyond the official documents, the paperwork.
Beyond the asset transfer notices.
Exactly. To understand the human cost.
Right. And our mission here, just to be clear for everyone listening, this isn't really a romance or even a story of political success in the usual sense. It's more an examination of the, frankly, brutal cost of royal diplomacy back then.
How a human soul could be systematically, almost clinically, dismantled and then repackaged as this magnificent queen.
Mm-hmm. We're trying to hear those forgotten voices, the ones buried under all the official history, the golden legends, what happens when a person becomes, well, currency.
And we've got some great source material for this, historical deep dives pulling from letters, diplomatic notes, palace chronicles, that kind of thing. So let's set the stage first, this monumental conflict that basically demanded Isabel's sacrifice.
Yeah, you have to understand the backdrop.
Okay, so to really get why this wedding was such a massive deal, you need to understand what Europe looked like then. For decades, literally decades, the continent was caught in this brutal cycle called the Italian Wars. Over 60 years of conflict.
Yeah, primarily between the House of Valois in France and the Habsburgs, who controlled Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. And these weren't just minor skirmishes.
No, not at all.
We're talking massive grinding campaigns, huge armies, mercenaries, clashing all over Italy. It was draining the lifeblood out of both France and Spain.
The sources really paint a grim picture. The cost was just astronomical, wasn't it?
Unbelievable. Treasuries were constantly empty. I mean, think about it. Even Spain, with all that silver flooding in from the New World, was struggling to pay for it. It was just pouring money into this endless war.
And the chronicles talk about widespread starvation, crippling debt for the monarchs,
Yeah.
French gold, Spanish silver, basically just vanishing into the war machine.
Yeah, melted down to pay for soldiers and supplies, essentially. It just couldn't go on. Economically, socially, it was unsustainable.
So eventually, exhaustion kind of forces their hand, right, towards diplomacy.
Exactly. Which leads us to the Treaty of Cateau Cambrésis in 1559. The big peace treaty meant to finally end these wars. But peace, especially back then, always came at a price.
And this price, as one diplomat actually wrote, was more precious than gold.
Which turned out to be Isabel. The negotiators, these incredibly pragmatic men who thought in terms of maps and money, they calculated the cost of peace with this, well, chilling precision.
And they didn't settle on land or treasure.
No, they settled on a child, offered up essentially on the altar of political necessity.
It's horrifying when you put it like that. But why her specifically? Why a marriage?
Well, the thinking was the only way to really guarantee this peace would stick was a blood tie.
Yeah.
Treaties could be broken, promises forgotten.
Right.
But children born from this union, they'd carry the blood of both French Valois and Spanish Habsburgs. That shared future, those shared heirs, that was seen as the ultimate insurance policy.
So before she became this insurance policy, who was she? Just Isabel de Valois, daughter of Henry II and Catherine de Medici in France.
Right. Living this incredibly privileged, cultured life at the height of the French Renaissance court. Think tapestries, music, learning, a dazzling, if sometimes dangerous, environment.
And she was young, just 13, still sort of in that space between childhood and the political realities that her older sisters were probably already facing.
Very much so. Accounts from her childhood are quite striking. Her tutors raved about her. Quick mind, gentle, really sunny disposition, apparently.
And talented too, right? Fluent in Latin Italian, played the lute.
Yes, and embroidery. described as having master craftsman precision, just remarkably accomplished for her age.
So by all accounts, she was kind of perfect.
She was perfect, and that, tragically was the problem. In the cold equations of royal diplomacy, her perfection, her intelligence, her grace, her youth, and crucially her untouched purity made her the absolute ideal piece of currency.
The perfect vessel, untainted, ready to carry the future heirs of two empires.
Precisely. So she becomes the payment in, arguably, the most expensive deal of the 16th century, a human being traded for peace.
And when she asked her father, "Why me?" Which seems like such a natural, heartbreaking question.
The response, according to the sources, was all silk phrases. Duty, honor, serving France. The kind of language leaders use to justify difficult, sometimes terrible decisions.
Asking brutal truth.
Which was exactly as you said, because she existed, because she was young and pure, because her womb was, well, available for the seed of empire, as they might have thought of it. She was the living promise, traded to stop the killing. So imagine being 13, maybe still playing with dolls, believing adults are there to protect you, and then getting this news. Marriage. To Philip II of Spain, a man twice her age, king of the country France, had been fighting for her entire life.
The shock must have been immense. It wouldn't have felt real at first, surely. Just an abstraction.
Probably not, until the rumors started. And those rumors were specific and, frankly, terrifying.
Yeah, talk about the groom. Philip II, 32 years old. A widower. Already his first wife died in childbirth.
Right. And known for being, well, not cheerful. Deeply melancholic, obsessed with religious duty. His court wasn't the lively French court she knew.
No. The accounts describe the Spanish court as, like, corridors of black stone and shadows. A place where laughter just died.
Philip ruled from his desk, meticulously going through state papers. His whole world revolved around the Escorial, that massive, imposing palace monastery mausoleum he built. It was literally designed to project seriousness, burden, duty.
And there were darker whispers, too, weren't there? Things her French ladies-in-waiting probably muttered about.
Oh, yes. Persistent rumors about his health, hints of cruelty, maybe driving his first wife to despair, and then the Spanish Inquisition.
Chilling.
It's documented that Philip attended the auto da fes, the public burnings of heretics. He saw it as his sacred duty, watched, apparently expressionless, as people burned.
That paints a picture of someone utterly detached, doesn't it? Devoid of normal human empathy.
Utterly. A man driven by abstract duty, not sentiment. And this was the man her father was sending her to marry.
So the moment the deal was struck, this transformation began. The process of erasing her French identity.
Immediately. And it was thorough. This wasn't just about getting a new wardrobe. It was psychological dismantling.
The clothes first. Right. Out went the bright French colors.
Gone. Replaced by the severe, heavy black silks dictated by Spanish court fashion, the traje de corte. These weren't clothes about luxury. They were about communicating piety, submission, almost perpetual mourning. They physically weighed her down, suppressed her natural energy.
And her routine changed completely, too. No more games or lighthearted stories.
Strictly forbidden. Anything that smacked of French gaiety was seen as frivolous, potentially even bordering on religiously suspect in the ultra-conservative Spanish court.
Wow. And then the language, the protocol.
Yeah. New Spanish tutors arrived. The language reportedly felt harsh, like stones in her mouth compared to French. And endless protocol rehearsals. How to walk small, submissive steps. How to speak deferentially, never offering an opinion unless asked. How to arrange her face, pious contentment was the goal.
Every single correction, every lesson was designed to chip away at her spontaneity, wasn't it?
Absolutely. They were literally carving away the girl she was, trying to reveal this sort of queen-shaped void underneath, ready to be filled by Spanish expectations. The mental toll must have been just crushing.
But the absolute lowest point, the most dehumanizing part of this whole process, had to be the verification of her virginity.
Without a doubt, that was the moment her body officially became state property. And it was incredibly degrading. The sources are quite clear about this.
And crucially, this wasn't some private medical exam.
No. Picture this. Isabel, barely 14, probably trembling in just her shift, being physically examined in front of an audience.
An audience. Who was there?
Physicians, obviously, but also clerks, taking detailed notes, and critically, high-ranking Spanish ambassadors. They were there to witness and certify the condition of the asset.
Oh my God. So her body is literally being notarized. Proof of value.
Precisely. Proof of value on the international marriage market. The atmosphere must have been thick with this awful sense of male assessment, of power being wielded without any regard for her humanity.
Like fingers crawling over her skin,
Yeah,
as
right.
one account apparently described it.
Yeah, and the physicians, they approached it with clinical detachment, discussing her physical development, her potential for childbearing. The sources say things like her pelvis, her breasts, with the same dispassion they might use examining livestock. A valuable broodmare.
While the ambassadors are calculating the return on investment.
Essentially, yes, based on the prognosis for heirs. And when those documents were finally signed and sealed, confirming her purity, that was the moment she understood. She didn't belong to herself anymore, not even her own body.
There was nowhere left to hide. Her most private reality was now a matter of public record for strangers. Just gone.
So the journey itself from France to Spain, it wasn't a celebration for her. It was more like a slow funeral procession.
Right. She's in this gilded carriage, which is just deeply ironic, isn't it? Watching crowds cheer for the peace she represents, but feeling completely numb inside.
Seeing herself, as one source suggests, as the girl dying inside the golden carriage. They were cheering for the alliance, for the end of war, but they had no idea about the personal cost.
And apparently she tried to memorize things. The French countryside, the clouds.
Desperately clinging to memories, trying to burn the image of France into her mind before the final break, counting down the miles to that point of no return.
Which came at the Bediso River, the border.
Yeah.
This moment called the exchange of the princesses.
A very clinical, diplomatic term for what was an incredibly traumatic event. The sources even call the river a watery grave for her identity.
Because this was where everything was finally officially severed.
Absolutely everything. She was stripped of every last connection to her past life and handed over, essentially naked of identity, to the Spanish delegation.
Her French ladies-in-waiting, the ones who knew her, they couldn't cross.
No, they had to stay on the French side, watching her go. Imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for everyone. And it wasn't just people.
Right. The stripping was literal, too.
Totally literal. The Spanish insisted no French contamination. All her French clothes, even her undergarments, had to be abandoned. Anything that carried the scent or style of France.
And personal items, too, like keepsakes.
Confiscated. Her mother's ring, a locket with her father's portrait, even her French prayer cross, all taken away and replaced with heavy Spanish religious items.
This wasn't just symbolic then, it was about appeasing factions in Spain.
Very much so. There were powerful groups in Spain deeply suspicious of anything French, worried about cultural influence or even lingering hints of religious impurity. This public stripping proved the new queen was shedding her old allegiances.
So she literally crossed that bridge wearing only new Spanish clothes, received by this formal, cold delegation.
Exactly. Their courtesies were stiff, mechanical. They saw her purely as a foreign import, valuable only for her future function.
And Spain itself felt different. The landscape.
The sources contrast it sharply with France. Where France was green and gentle, Spain seemed harsh, brown, arid, almost hostile. The palaces felt like fortresses, huge, imposing, cold, filled with dark wood and stern religious art that seemed to follow her everywhere.
And the people were suspicious too.
They stared, not with welcoming curiosity apparently, but more like inspecting an exotic animal, and the Spanish nobles assigned to her entourage. They didn't make it easy.
How so?
They mostly spoke Spanish among themselves, making little effort to include her. Their language sounded harsh to her, like grinding metal, and she likely overheard snippets debating her suitability, her strength for childbearing, whether her obvious fear was weakness or proper feminine submission.
Constant assessment. Then finally Madrid, the Alcazar.
Another imposing structure, designed to intimidate as much as impress. And waiting there, in the throne room, Philip II, 32, gaunt, dressed head to toe in black.
Absorbing all the light, as you said. A man defined by duty and burden.
Yes. And heavily influenced by his father, Charles V's abdication and retreat into monastic life. Philip saw his kingship as a divine, almost punishing responsibility.
So when he looks at Isabel, this terrified 14-year-old, he doesn't see a person.
The sources strongly suggest he saw a component, a tool, necessary for the alliance. He was evaluating her function, her utility for Spain, not her feelings or her well-being.
And their first meeting reflected that.
Completely. Sterile. Impersonal. He apparently spoke in a flat monotone, sometimes reading from notes. Expressed satisfaction with the alliance, the treaty she embodied, but asked nothing personal about her journey, her family, how she was feeling.
Just business.
Purely transactional. And Isabel, struggling to get out the Spanish phrases she'd rehearsed, the words felt like gravel. Philip might nod approvingly at her linguistic effort, but showed no warmth, no interest in the actual girl behind the words.
She must have realized then, looking around that room, that everyone was just witnessing the completion of a contract. Her usefulness was all that mattered.
Precisely. Her function for the state was her entire reason for being there. The wedding itself, following that meeting, sounds less like a joyous union and more like, well, the final sealing of the deal.
That heavy gold gown you mentioned earlier, transforming her into a living icon. Hard to move, hard to breathe, probably. Less a bride, more a symbol.
Exactly, a physical manifestation of the peace treaty, and Philip at the altar. The descriptions suggest he looked like he was reviewing state documents. Dutiful, focused, but utterly devoid of emotion.
Just getting the job done. The vows, committing her to love, honor, and obey this man who saw her primarily as equipment.
Useful equipment, yes. Speaking those vows in Spanish must have felt like another small death for her French self.
And then came the wedding night. Any lingering hope of tenderness, of maybe finding some human connection? That died pretty quickly, didn't it?
Brutally, according to the accounts. Philip approached the consummation as another grim duty, mechanical, efficient, focused solely on legally consummating the marriage to legitimize the alliance. It was about possession, not passion or even basic kindness.
The sources are quite graphic, suggesting she just stared at the ceiling, at the painted saints, trying to mentally escape her own body.
Trying to dissociate, yeah. And afterward, Philip apparently just left. No word of comfort, no acknowledgement of the trauma. For him, it was an obligation fulfilled, like signing off on a budget.
And then the ultimate public humiliation. The next morning.
The public display of the blood-stained sheets. Standard practice for royal weddings then, but utterly devastating personally. It was the final confirmation. The transaction was complete. The asset was verified as pristine.
Her intimate physical pain was instantly converted into political proof, political triumph even.
That's the moment, if she hadn't grasped it fully before, that she understood. She wasn't a person anymore. She was a function, a biological system whose primary purpose was manufacturing Spanish heirs.
Her inner life, her feelings, her history, completely irrelevant noise within the grand machine of the Spanish Empire.
The years that followed seemed like a blur, a haze of suffocating duty. She had to learn the incredibly strict, intricate rules of the Spanish court. When to speak, rarely. When to be silent, almost always, especially around politics. How to maintain that mask of pious serenity.
And her French language became
The
secret language, yeah. Hoarded, spoken only softly to herself, maybe in prayer in the dead of night, a tiny piece of her old self she tried to keep hidden.
And Philip. Did things ever thaw between them?
All accounts suggest no. He remained a stranger. Their marital encounters continued, but always with that same mechanical devotion, like attending mass or signing papers. It was a ritual of possession, devoid of warmth or real connection. She looked for some flicker of humanity in him, but found only that cold assessment. And the court itself was constantly watching her, wasn't it? Like hawks.
Relentlessly. And judgmentally. If she showed any hint of her natural French liveliness, maybe smiled too freely, she was criticized for frivolity, lack of piety.
But if she was serious or sad,
Then she was suspected of harboring foreign sympathies, maybe even disloyalty. There was just no way to win. She quickly learned she could only succeed or fail at her one assigned task.
which was producing an heir.
Reproduction. The pressure started immediately. Her body, still developing, was put under immense strain with pregnancy after pregnancy.
Her first one ended in miscarriage, right? How was that handled?
Recorded in official documents as simply a disappointment, a failure of primary obligation. No mention of her grief, her pain, her fear.
Just a glitch in the system.
Pretty much. The court watched her constantly. Was she pregnant? Was she sick? What did her food cravings mean? Her body wasn't her own. It was this walking experiment, constantly monitored for results.
And when miscarriages happened, repeatedly, the blame fell on her.
Always. The toll on her physically and mentally must have been immense. We're talking about a teenager, constantly pregnant, constantly losing babies, constantly failing in the eyes of the court.
And nobody considered maybe she was too young, too traumatized.
No, the physicians looked elsewhere. It was her French blood, or her melancholy, or she wasn't pious enough. They discussed her reproductive health-like mechanics, discussing faulty equipment, independent of the terrified young woman experiencing it all.
It's just staggering. Her rapid physical decline between, 14 and 22 was seen as a professional failure, not a human tragedy.
That really sums up the priorities at the time, and perhaps of Philip's court specifically. Function over personhood. Always.
So, amidst all this darkness, this constant pressure and scrutiny, did she have any escapes? Any small comforts?
She did find a few small sanctuaries, things that, according to those few sympathetic attendants, kept her from complete despair. Music was one.
Her lute.
Yes. Playing her lute allowed her to express things, sadness, fear, longing that she couldn't possibly say out loud in Spanish. Music could cross those barriers. It was a way back to her French soul, maybe just for a little while.
And prayer.
Prayer was vital, but significantly she prayed in French, whispering to a God who might remember the girl she used to be before the crown and the duty crushed her. It was her only truly private communication.
Did this stark Spanish religious imagery around her, did that resonate? All those martyrs?
Apparently, yes. The sources suggest she spent time looking at paintings of suffering saints, particularly female martyrs like St. Catherine, and she reportedly wondered if martyrdom, a quick, definitive end, might have been more dignified than the slow erasure.
Wow. That's incredibly bleak.
It is, and beyond that, just tiny stolen moments, brief, very careful conversations with a couple of trusted ladies-in-waiting, talking about safe things like embroidery or the weather, just a sliver of human warmth.
But always under the shadow of being watched.
Well, always. Knowing any word could be reported back, real intimacy was impossible.
So these small comforts were just fragile defenses against the main pressure.
Yeah.
Having children.
Exactly. And then, around age 17, she carried another child further than before. The whole court was on tenterhooks.
And for Isabel, did this feel different?
It seems so. This baby represented, maybe, finally, a purpose. Something that could give meaning to all the suffering. A possibility for, well, maybe not love, but peace. Acceptance.
Did Philip's behavior change?
His attention increased, yes. More visits. But the diplomatic letters confirm his focus remained clinical. He was observing the progress of his potential heir, like checking on a crucial state project, still detached.
And the birth itself?
Agonizing. Hours and hours of labor in a room full of officials there primarily to witness the birth and verify the baby's sex and legitimacy.
And in her worst pain, she reverted to French.
Yes, the accounts say she started crying out in French, calling for her mother. The language of her childhood surfaced when control broke down. Utterly incomprehensible, of course, to the Spanish attendants.
And after all that?
Yeah.
18 hours, you said.
18 hours. It was a daughter. Isabel Clara Eugenia. And the disappointment in the room was apparently immediate, almost tangible.
A daughter was useful politically, eventually, but not the male heir Philip craved.
Exactly. The baby was whisked away, assessed for her future value as a diplomatic pawn, while her mother was left exhausted, grieving the hope that had just died.
And more pregnancies followed. More daughters.
Yes. More hope, more agonizing labor, more daughters, more disappointment. Each pregnancy took a devastating toll on her already weakened body.
So by 1568, she's only 22.
Yeah.
But physically much older.
The sources say she had the constitution of a woman twice her age. She was completely worn out. Her final pregnancy began, and it was clear her body just couldn't handle it.
Another brutal labor.
Nearly 2 days, another daughter arrived, Catherine Michelle. But Isabel started hemorrhaging immediately after. The fever took hold quickly.
And in her final moments.
She drifted. Between the cold reality of the Spanish palace and seemingly memories of the French gardens she'd left behind 8 years earlier.
Her last words. They weren't to Philip or the courtiers.
No, her very last act was a quiet rebellion, perhaps. She spoke not to them, but seemingly to the memory of her mother, Catherine de Medici, whom she hadn't seen in years.
She spoke in French.
In French, the language she'd clung to. And her words were just heartbreakingly simple. Justify. I am tired.
Justify, I am tired. I am justified, and I am tired.
Exactly. Acknowledging the role forced upon her, perhaps, but also the utter exhaustion of fulfilling it.
She died on October 3rd, 1568, 22 years old, just 8 years after crossing that river.
And the final chilling detail, diplomatic letters confirm Philip II started negotiations for his next marriage, his fourth wife, Anne of Austria, almost immediately, before Isabel's body was even cold. Business as usual. #outro. So, wrapping up this deep dive, Isabel's life really throws into sharp relief that brutal distinction between a royal person and a royal function.
Yeah, she absolutely delivered peace between France and Spain, which is huge historically.
Yeah.
But the price was, well, everything. Her identity, her health, her spirit, her life, systematically dismantled.
History often just footnotes her, doesn't it? The French queen who didn't produce a male heir for Spain, a failure in her primary role.
But hopefully, after hearing this, you, our listeners, see her differently. Not as a failure, but as a child sacrificed. A life whose intense suffering really highlights the human cost when people are treated purely as instruments.
As tools for politics, rather than souls deserving of autonomy, of basic human kindness, let alone love. Her tragedy isn't just that she died young, it's that from the moment that treaty was signed, She was never really allowed to live at all.
Her sacrifice bought stability for kings and empires, but it cost her existence.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it, about modern parallels. Where do we still see individuals being asked or forced to sacrifice their autonomy, their private selves, for some larger good or political expediency, even if it's wrapped up in those same silk phrases of duty or necessity?
That's a powerful question. You think about maybe the intense pressure on the families of political figures today, where every aspect of their lives, their struggles, their very identities can be managed or suppressed to maintain a public image.
Or even in less dramatic ways. People in high-pressure corporate roles sometimes have to curate their entire lives, sacrificing personal truth or authenticity to fit the demanded function. Their real selves become secondary to the role they play for the organization.
It prompts you to consider, maybe, what parts of ourselves we sometimes feel pressured to sideline or even abandon, whether consciously or not, to meet external expectations or obligations. It's a complex thought.
It is. And if you want to explore this era further, particularly the court of Philip II, his mindset, the atmosphere of that Spanish court, there's a wealth of material out there. It's a fascinating, if often deeply unsettling, period of history.